he's saying is it's 1 o'clock, so whether we're here or not, we're going to begin. So welcome everyone to the October 12th meeting of our Utilities Commissions. I think my first job is to do that, welcome, and then call the roll, which I will do.
I will do.
Patrice, that's right, you do that. I have to do the votes, never mind.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, commissioners. And first on my list is Chairman Randall Tuttle.
Present.
Vice Chairman Wesley Curtis.
Present.
Commissioner Howard Day.
Present.
Commissioner Tom Griffin.
Present.
Commissioner Yvonne Hines.
Here.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan.
Present.
Commissioner Dwayne Long.
Present.
Commissioner Chris Parker.
Present.
Commissioner Donald Stewart.
You're on mute.
Present.
Okay, Commissioner Alan Younger.
Present.
And Commissioner Charles Wilson.
Present.
Okay.
Thank you, Patrice.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Since I messed up my main and only one job, I will now turn it over to Courtney.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started with our PowerPoint, as always, I will introduce those from the staff that are on the call. So myself, Courtney Driver, Utilities Director, Damon Duquesne, Assistant City Manager, Patrice Glenn, Recording Secretary, Mike Quavisto, Deputy Director, Jan McCarg, Assistant Director, Solid Waste, Michael Stover, Assistant Director, Operations. I don't see Kenny on yet. Is Kenny on here, Mike?
He was.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay. Oh, there you are. I see you now, Kenny. So Kenny Atkins, our Field Operations Manager, is on today. Shane Chow Hoofman, Capital Projects Engineer. Todd Lewis, who's our Senior Civil Engineer. Gail Kettler and Kyra Boyd with the Communications Team. Lisa Saunders, our Chief Financial Officer. Jerry Bates, Purchasing Director. I don't see Marilena on here yet, but she'll be joining shortly. And Kirk Bjorling.
I'm on.
Oh, you are on. Thank you, Marilena.
Yes, sorry. Sure.
So Marilena, Assistant City Attorney. Kirk Bjorling, Real Estate Administrator. And Jakira Westbrook with the Office of Business Inclusion and Advancement. So I think I got everybody covered. It's hard to see. Make sure you get everybody when you're looking. So I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And that was the wrong one, so hold on. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we'll start with, I have a few announcements to make. And then, as I mentioned, Kenny Atkins is here to go over the field operations overview. This is a part 3 of our series for the utilities overview. Then our water and wastewater updates, some financial updates, solid waste, go over our agenda items, and then if there's time, the CIP. So just a recap from the planning and policy meeting that was held on September 16th. We discussed 3 topics, the impacts of Executive Orders 124 and 142. We discussed the cross-connection control program, fees, and the resale of water. The last 2 topics are on your agenda today for some changes to the resolution. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about those later on. As far as the impacts of Executive Orders 124 and 142, we did determine the consensus was that we would handle delinquent accounts in the following manner. We began payment plans in October. We're offering up to a 9-month duration. We reinstituted late fees in October, and we're going to reinstitute terminations for non-payment in January. So far, we've issued a press release, which was picked up by the Journal, and Gail had an interview on WFMY. And we've also mailed notices to all customers that have a past due balance with the specifics regarding our plan and what they need to do to sign up for a payment a payment plan. And then, of course, we'll continue to advertise this and remind our customers of what they need to do to avoid cutoffs come January. Another update is our utilities move. We are technically moving on October 30th, so a little less than 3 weeks. We've got some temporary space across the street in the Bryce Stewart building, where some of us are going to have temporary space and then others will be working from home permanently for probably around 6 months. Initially, I had thought about canceling the November meeting because we're going to be focused on moving towards the end of this month. But I think what we'll do is continue with the November meeting. It'll be virtual, but we'll just focus on agenda items. We won't focus on our normal other updates in the PowerPoint. So we'll have a little bit of a lighter agenda, but that's just to keep things moving, keep our agenda items moving, and any business that we have, we're not going to be delaying that. So expect that in November. I wanted to share the FY21 key work items. These are on my list for the department that I submit to the manager's office, and I hadn't shared this list yet with you for FY21, but I'll just briefly go through them. Successfully complete year 5 of the CSIP, which is our collection system improvement program. Award an engineering contract for the water distribution master plan. Award a construction contract for the water main improvement projects. We've already done that. That's complete. We awarded that in August. Receive bids for Nelson modernization project. Award construction contract for the Everly, Martin Mill, and Lowry Street lift station upgrades. Successfully complete the advanced metering infrastructure initial deployment. Evaluate affordability of water and sewer rates within our service area to see if an assistance program is needed. Complete renovations to the 2nd floor of the Bryce Stewart building for the utilities administration move. And then expand landfill gas well fields at Haynes Landfill and continue the DEQ permitting process for the MSC wall at Haynes Landfill. So as the year goes on, I'll update you on the status of all those. There's other strategic initiatives for our department. These, as I mentioned, these are for the city manager's office. We have other initiatives that come out of our strategic plan, as well as an initiative, an equity initiative that we discussed last month. And Chairman Tuttle and I are discussing those initiatives. And so you'll see those in future months, and we'll talk more about those in the future. Any questions on any of those at this time? Okay. With that, I am going to turn it over to Kenny. Kenny's our field operations manager, and so he will have go over an overview of what he does.
Good afternoon, commission members and utility staff. Utilities field operations located at 1550 South Martin Luther King Drive. The division consists of 5 work groups. We have water distribution, meter services, wastewater collection and system compliance, construction services, and technical services. In this picture was taken about a year ago, maybe 14 months ago. We had an 8-inch water main. It was cast iron that broke on Walltown. Our GIS records show this was installed around the year 1927. So this is cast iron pipe. Life expectancy in a good working system is around 80 to 100 years. So we were right around the 92 mark or so, 93 mark. So that's pretty good. It is common to find these type of failures in our pipes just because system age, and sometimes we impact our own selves by turning pumps on, or in the past we turned pumps on fast or shut hydrants fast, and all that can weaken a pipe. But we feel really good that 90-some years out of a water main is a long time, and we can't get our own bodies to last that long. So felt pretty good about that. You know, what the main thing to tell you is I think around 1955, ductile iron pipe was introduced. So somewhere along those lines, we started switching over. So we still have a lot of cast in the ground, but as a utility, we're trying to get the most for our money. The next 2 slides, you'll see two main breaks The first one is at Highway 52. It's a 6-inch, cast iron pipe. And the second video you'll see, second slide you'll see, is an 8-inch ductile iron pipe that broke. Both of these broke the same week. It was a stretch of cold weather in 2015. I was currently working at the water plant, and we've had anywhere from 4.5 to almost 8 inches of ice on top of our sed basins. So that's a rarity because water's always moving, but we had frozen water. The ice was really thick. We had to go out there and punch holes in it so the sludge scrapers could continue to work. Both these pipes broke because they were underneath the bridge. They were aerial lines. The water usage was really low, right? It's 4 degrees. No one's washing the car. Nobody's watering the lawn. We actually shut down 2 of the large arteries in Winston-Salem. So if you play those videos, you can. So the hard part about that was a lot of the roads were still icy. We were creating ice. We tried to get out there and close the water valves as quickly as possible. We did end up losing quite an amount of water, but thank goodness we were able to respond in a safe manner and get those lanes opened back up. So our water distribution, we maintain about 2,325 miles of infrastructure. If you could think about that from end to end, if you know anything about I-40, it starts in Wilmington, ends in Barstow, California. The length of that is 2,560 miles. So if you stacked our water main end to end, you make it all the way to like Needles, California. So that's pretty neat to see that how much water main or how many miles of infrastructure we maintain. This includes pipes, valves, water connections, and we also maintain about 20,000 water hydrants or fire hydrants. It's a lot of hydrants out there. A lot of that's probably the main thing that you see from water distribution. The field operations group, we're kind of like the DOT of your water in your sewer. We take care of pretty much everything that you can't see with the regards of hydrants. Those are pretty common to see. I cringe every time there's a Monday night football game or Super Bowl. Halloween's a good one. Usually someone ends up having a little bit too much fun and knocking over a hydrant, but we're responsible for replacing and repairing those hydrants. We also do renew connections. We do a little bit of water main extensions, not much, but we do a lot of repairs. We have 2 shifts, starting at 7:30, and the second shift ends at midnight. We do handle emergency response after hours. We have a duty crew that works or is responsible for handling any calls that come in from midnight to 7:30. So we do provide 24-hour emergency response. Meter services is also housed up here. They're responsible for starting and stopping water services. They read approximately 130,000 residential, commercial, and industrial meters. And maintenance includes replacing and repairing meters ranging from 3/4 inch in size to up to 10 inches. They also perform leak and usage investigations. Unfortunately, this COVID has made a lot of people work from home, and we've noticed a large uptick in calls with customers complaining about their water bill being too high, and they're not used to seeing water bills as high as they are because everyone's at home. So that the meter services group, they spend a lot of time investigating high water usage, and most of the time it's just because people are at home and they're not used to seeing water consumption as high as they have. Excuse me. Our wastewater collection group, they maintain over 1,800 miles of infrastructure. So now, combined with our water mains and now our sewer mains, if you got back on 40 and started in Wilmington, you go drive out to Barstow, California, and turn around and come back all the way to Little Rock, Arkansas. That's how much pipe we have to maintain. So that's quite a bit for us to look after. But the wastewater collection group, they also clean and inspect sewer mains and connections. We reclaim and maintain easements. One of the biggest things that we do is we respond to sewer stoppages and overflows. Last year, we had the lowest amount of SSOs at 74. That's the lowest we have since we've been tracking that. So that was a big win for us. The next, yeah, there it is. This slide, there's two pictures. This is actual footage of our system. The one on the left is a sewer manhole. You'll see those white, long grease deposits. And the one on the right is what happens after that. The grease will get stuck in the sewer main. So the picture on the right is actually the sewer main with wipes and rags and other debris that catches. And what will happen is that wastewater will start to hold, what we call hold, start backing up in the sewer main. Hopefully, we can catch it before it overflows. But that is one of our main goals, is to keep grease out of the pipes. I think Gail Kettler, in coordination with Industrial Waste Control and Utilities Field Operations, put out, we launched a large campaign for no wipes in the pipes. We've also seen a large uptick in wipes in the pipes because of COVID. Number one, mainly because there was not any toilet paper to be found on the shelf. So people were using these so-called flushable wipes. Flushable wipes, of course, if you read the package, you'll say, oh, they're great to use. They're okay to use on a well-maintained system. Well, not everybody's system is well-maintained, and they'll say that they're biodegradable. Well, it may be in 100 years. Well, it doesn't take that long for a wipe to get from your house to the sewer plant. So someone's going to have to deal with those wipes, either this group or the wastewater plants. They either have to get them out by mechanically screening. But biggest thing is that there's a place for everything. A place for those wipes is in the waste basket. All right. Also in the pipes and the sewer mains that could cause backups or root intrusion. The picture on the left shows some fine roots coming in at a joint. We usually can get rid of those by jetting those sewer mains out and then putting a chemical treatment on it. Picture on the right, however, that's a pretty large mass. We'll have to physically remove that one before we can do any kind of sewer jetting or chemical application. Those roots have grown in through the sewer main and through the joints of the brick manhole. So, like I said, we've got to stick hooks and grabbers and ropes and attach them to come-alongs and hoist to remove those. The cross-connection control, that falls really under our distribution group. This is one of the new groups that started last fiscal year up here. And it's really to comply with North Carolina state statute. We have to govern and ensure that our water system, your public water supply is safe to drink. We now have to watch over all connections to hydrants for constructions And what we basically had to do is they have to prove to us, these contractors, that they can't use anything under 2 inch. So on the left, you'll see this water tanker. That's a construction vehicle. On top of it is an air gap. That air gap is should be two times the inside diameter of the pipe that's coming into the tank. We actually can go up to 4 times the diameter pipe, just depending on the configuration of where the pipe is and what tank's being used. But for this purpose, it's 2.5. These guys have to come and get inspected by our cross connection control. That is an approved air gap on that truck by the state of North Carolina and by the city of Winston-Salem. Picture on the right, that's a hydrant meter, and that's actually an assembly. That's a back pressure, backflow prevention assembly with a meter in it. So we have to, there's a process to apply for that and fees that are associated with that. Our cross connection control is responsible for all the paperwork and maintaining all those records. These two pictures that you see are backflow devices. This is actually the same picture, just one has a cover on it. This is when we went out to do an inspection. Each supplier of water shall maintain records at the location, device type, installation date, and the big kicker is we have to list the potential of hazard. Evidently, this is at a residential facility. There's probably some type of pool or irrigation system. So this is a reduced pressure zone assembly. So this is probably a higher risk, meaning that there's some kind of chemical injection, maybe in a pool or fertilizer. But the main goal for the cross connection and control program is to protect your water supply. It's not always ours, right? You guys pay for it, the customers pay for it, but this is just to protect the system for any kind of backflow, back siphonage, or any kind of cross connection. And the big thing now is that not only do we have to govern what's going on, we have to maintain those records. We'll maintain them for 4 years or as long as the device is in service. So there's a lot of work. We estimate there's 15,000 backflow assemblies out there in Forsyth County that we have to oversee. It's going to be a large taking for us to do. We appreciate the support that we've gotten. This program is probably going to grow through the years because I don't think we've ever eased up on any water rules and regulations. I mean, they keep getting stricter and stricter. So I see this becoming something we'll have to deal with for the next 10, 15 years.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for Kenny before we move on?
Thanks,
Courtney,
Kenny.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Kenny,
Yes.
are there any truck-mounted hydrant meters still out there?
No, sir.
So if we see a water truck hooked up to a hydrant and they don't have a meter on the hydrant, we need to report them. Is that correct?
You don't have to report it. They should have a placard on the side of that truck. If there's a placard on that truck, then they've gone through our inspection process. What you'll see is if there's a meter, if there's a hydrant with a hose connected to it, that's using for a construction site. Now that's different. They'll need to have the assembly installed at that device, and our guys will go out there and install it and remove it. But for construction services, like doing DOT for a water tanker, such like that, they don't have to have the assembly because their truck has been inspected and has that air gap.
how do you then know who's taking water from the system?
Well, we keep record of who and where and when we place those hydrant and backflow assemblies. But then we placard every truck or vessel that comes through. So even our own vessel. So if they don't have the updated placard on it, that's when they're illegal.
Okay.
Kenny, Harold Day here. I got a question. I talked to Courtney a couple weeks ago about a KRG. Do they have a permit for their trucks?
Who was that?
KRG, our subcontractor, does.
Yes. Our contractors that work for us have to apply by the same rules that anyone else would. So how we like to operate is our own jet trucks that contain water. We are in compliance with this new rule. We had to make some modifications to our trucks, but it's only fair that we do exactly what we're telling the public to do.
My question, I was watching one fill up, didn't have no meter on its hose. I guess they do a flat permit fee or something because they're working for us.
That's correct. They pay a fee.
Okay, thank you.
Where will you see the placard?
Well, Courtney, if you can go back 2 slides, I think you'll see on the truck that blue placard. It'll say 20 on it for 2020 and in October. That's when the placard was good for.
Okay.
And I meant to tell you that we're probably the most visible group out there. We're probably one of the largest groups in utilities, probably the largest group in utilities. We're probably the most fun group to be around. We're the most exciting. When we pull up, usually we're in large trucks, something loud, something's going on. Usually we get a lot of attention from children. I'm a child myself. I kind of like the big equipment out here, but we have a big focus on trying to, lose the old image of what people would call a city employee, and we're trying to change that face every day. But we are the most visible, so we take the good and bad. Sometimes that draws a little negative attention, but we do our best.
Great. Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Mike Stover.
Thank you, Kenny, and good afternoon, everybody. So far this calendar year, our plan review team has issued 36 conveyance permits, totaling $3.424 million. This next slide will show the breakdown between water and sewer mileage. So far this calendar year, we've permitted 8.8 miles of water mains and 6.5 miles of sewer mains. This drought monitor was updated on October 6th before the monsoon this weekend. And even then, there was no county under drought conditions. For the month of September, we received about 4.6 inches of rain, which is way more than we received last September. You can barely see any red from 2019 for this month. But there's no county in the state under drought conditions right now. Here's our water production slide. This may look a little worse than it really is. We had very little rain in September of 2019, and we had an exceptional month, 42.2 MGD, million gallons per day. This month, a year later, we had a subpar month. We don't know if that is because of above average rain or if it's having a COVID impact. But we had a 5.8 million gallon per day decrease from this time last year. Here's our fiscal year to date water production numbers. As I mentioned, last year was exceptional. And I think last year, kind of bumped up the 5-year average, which we're below right now, but we're slightly below 2017 and 18, 2018, 2019. Collection system update. We have not received reports from July, August, September, or October. We did receive the report for June. We had 3 notice of deficiencies, which is kind of like your outside of no further action, your least, your lowest action that the state gives you. We had 1 notice of violation and 0 intend to enforce SSOs. Here's our SSO rate per 100 miles. We're still doing very well. Last year, as Kenny mentioned, we had a record year. Through the first 3 months of 2020, we were below where we were last year. So we're on pace to even have a better year than last year. Over the winter is usually, very tough. We have an uptick in SSOs. If we can get that number down, we'll do very well. Our goal this year, Kenny mentioned we had 74 SSOs last year. Our internal goal this year is 65. Here's our SSOs by aggregated cause. We had 1 categorized as other. That was due to a private utility contractor. They had a shallow sewer main with a traco on top of it and crushed it in the process of relocating that main, which created a sewer spill. We had 3 pipe failures and 1 related to fog, roots, and debris. Cleaning productivity, we're still well above our 10% permit requirement, slightly below our 20% scheduled cleaning goal. As I mentioned last month, we're still early on in the fiscal year. Our cleaning contractors are getting in their groove. We've had some internal staffing challenges. I talked to Kenny this morning, and we've got 3 of our sewer group members leaving our department, going to other places. So we're going to have some vacancies to fill, and that might hurt us, in the interim. Any questions on the water and sewer updates?
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Mike Quivisto.
All right, thank you, Courtney, and Michael. Good afternoon, commission members. We'll start by taking a look at the billed water and wastewater revenues for the current fiscal year, which are represented by the blue bar and are higher through the first 3 months of the year compared to last year and the budget. It is still early, and we'll continue to monitor this, especially given what Michael Stover just showed us there with our water production being lower for the past 2 months, especially when compared to those same months the prior year. So that'll impact our billing moving forward. On to the expenditure side, with the actual expenditures for the first 3 months of FY21 are slightly lower than FY20 and under the budgeted amount. So we're tracking well on both currently both the revenue and expenditure side for the FY21 budget. So let's move on to the revenue impacts of COVID-19. So from April 1st through September 30th, we're looking at about 6 months of impact now. We've waived $2.1 million in late fees and penalties. $1.1 million of that is in the current fiscal year. And just as a reminder, we did not budget to collect any late fees or penalties in the current fiscal year. We also currently have nearly 16,000 past due accounts and a total of almost $4.5 million in past due billings. That's compared to just under $2 million in past due billings at the same time last year. And the past due billing amount increased $900,000 from August. Our delinquency rate at the end of September was at 30% compared to 10% at this time last year. So what we're seeing here is that these numbers are trending higher, which is, I think, to be expected, and we're hopeful that our outreach to customers with delinquent accounts will reverse this trend, and we'll be closely monitoring this as well moving forward. Any questions on that update there? If not, I'll turn it over to Lisa Saunders for an update on the FY20 year-end financial numbers.
Now, I'll try that one more time. Good afternoon, commission members. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good. Okay. Good to see everybody today. Today I'll be presenting the year-end financial statements for the Water and Sewer Fund and the Solid Waste Utility Fund. As a reminder, both of these funds are enterprise funds of the city of Winston-Salem. These are unaudited summarized numbers that I'll show you today. Our financial statement audit will be completed about the end of this month, and the city's financial report's usually available, the published report, 1st of December. So if anybody's interested in that report, I'll be glad to share it with you. Just shoot me an email. But today, this is the Water and Sewer Utility Fund balance sheet, and we're going to look at comparative numbers of June 30, 2020 to June 30, 2019. And I'll just point your attention to a couple things. First of all, the first line is cash. We're very comparable to last year, 74.5 million to 74.5 million. That's unrestricted cash. Our receivables net of allowance from collectibles are about 14.6 this year compared to 15 last year. Our restricted cash, if you go down a few lines, 52 million this year versus 68 last year. That's where all of our agreements with other funds, we're going to break this down on the next slide, but the decrease is mainly related to bond proceeds that were spent last year. The utility has right at 950 million property and equipment net of depreciation compared to about 900 million last year. And our total assets are about 1.1 million. If you drop to the liability section, our accounts payable at the end of the year were right at 19.5 million versus 15 last year. That's generally the outstanding bills at the end of the year, plus things that are larger, like contractor retainages, liquidated damages that we're holding on the one project, and that's what the 19.5 is. If you go down to the other two significant numbers are contracts payables, about 88 million. That includes our state loans and some other equipment financings. Bond payable, 429 million. These statements on our accrual basis of accounting are actually revenue bond debt is about 374 million outstanding at June 30, 2020. So if you go to the bottom line net position, I like to say this is if we sold the utility today, it's worth $574 million versus 534 from last, or 537 from last year. Any questions on the balance sheet? Okay, the next is just a breakdown of the cash that we saw on the balance sheet. First of all, again, unrestricted cash is about 74.5 million. And then we have the restricted cash number of 52 million. And that's made up of the construction fund, which is set aside according to various bond requirements that we have. There are bond documents. We had proceeds at the end of the year of 10.3. We've drawn about all of that now. So we'll be looking probably in the spring to come back with a plan for the next revenue bond issue. The various agreements that we have, Clemens, Kernersville, Walkertown, I won't read all of those, but those are the amounts that are restricted per their agreements. So our total restricted cash and investments are 52 million. Total cash in the fund is 126.6 million at the end of the year, which is very, very close to what we projected it would be in the budget forecast last year. Next slide, and you don't usually see this again in this sort of context, is comparison from June 30 to June 19th. And this is, again, on an accrual basis of accounting. The next slide will show a budget versus actual, which is a little more what you're normally seeing. But let's first look at operating revenues, 115 million. 210,981 at the end of June 30th versus 114.8 last year. You know, even though our sales were down in all categories, water, sewer, and industrial surcharge, your charges for other services, mainly system development fees, were up. Even though you'll see they're not quite what we budgeted them to be, they still were over what they were in 2019. So our revenues, you know, came in fairly strong, or where we expected them to be at the end of the year. The next section are operating expenses, and you'll see personnel, service, and maintenance and operations total 47.5 million versus 44.3 last year. That's about a 7% increase. Maintenance and operations were up slightly. Most of that is in personnel services. A lot of it is related to increases to the state retirement system. Some of the increases were related to the market study that had previously done that was in effect at the beginning of the year. So bottom line in that first section, our operating income is $38 million this year versus about $42.5 million last year. The next section is non-operating revenue expenditures. In intergovernmental revenues, 1.6 is very consistent to last year. Our investment income at the end of 2020 was right at $4 million compared to $7 million, which is still, you all know what the equity market did last year. So we still had a pretty good return. Utility has about 30% of cash that's invested in equities, and the other 70% is in fixed income or liquid cash. Our interest in physical expense, again, is comparable to last year, 20 million this year versus 20 million last year. Income before their capital contributions and transfers, 24 million versus 29.5 last year. Capital contributions, again, I'll emphasize this is an accrual statement, and not all of this is cash. 13 million this year versus 7.6. If you remember, we record conveyances on our revenue expense statement, and a large portion of that are conveyances that were recorded in fiscal 2020. So bottom line, as we saw before, the net position of the utility is 574 million versus 537 million from last year. Next page, this is budget versus actual, which is in a summarized basis, which you're generally more used to seeing. Our total revenues are 121,764 versus, or that was our budget versus our actual of 115,210. Again, we projected that that's where we would be, so we were right on target of where we thought we'd be at the end of the year. Personnel services, 22 versus 21.4. Maintenance and operations, 27 versus 24. Collectively, they were under budget 3.7 million. Our operating income was 69 million at the end of the year. And with that, we covered our debt service and investment income again of the 3.9. Interest in fiscal was 20 million, principal retirement was 15, and payment to refunded bond escrow age was 7 million, which is we refunded some debt last year. Bottom line, our change in position on a modified accrual basis was 45 million. And again, I'll make it clear that even though this is closer to budget, it's still a modified accrual statement. That's not all cash. 13 of that wasn't cash, so and probably more than that. But anyway, I'll answer any questions that you have on this statement. All righty. Okay, so we'll go to our debt coverage ratio. And again, this is required by our bond covenant is 1.1. At the end of the year, we're at 2.5. Our bond documents allow us to use those conveyances in our gross operating revenues, which they have been used here. So it actually makes us look really good at the end of the year. That's probably, or it's not probably, it will go down in 2021, but we're in a really good position. I feel really good about that.
And Lisa, as I recall, that might be our highest debt coverage ratio.
It's highest it's ever been. Yeah. It's great. It's great news. So
thanks.
Good. And I think that's all for me. Yes, it is, Mike. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, if there's no questions, then we'll turn it over to Jan, and she'll do the solid waste updates.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. Appreciate that. At Haynes Mill Road Landfill in the first quarter of the fiscal year, we took in 69,855 tons. So we're ahead of the budget by a couple thousand tons and behind where we were last year. And in the month of September, we took in 22,843 tons. So we bounced back a little bit from the low we had in August. But I should point out that our large commercial customers are decreased. When we look at what they brought us in the first quarter, they are decreased compared to the same period last year. And the construction and demolition waste stream is also decreased compared to last year and also tracking below the budget. We've taken in 10,152 tons at Old Salisbury Road landfill. So we're a little bit under the budget and significantly under where we were last year. We should note that last year was a really strong year for us. So it's not too surprising that we're under where we were last year, but we're gonna have to monitor that closely this year. And we have a couple more slides that are similar to the same format that you saw with water and sewer. This is the revenue for all our facilities, not just the landfills. So we've taken in 2.8 million so far this year, compared to a straight line budget target of 2.95. So we're slightly under the budget target with revenue so far this year. And on the expense side, expenses as of this morning for supplies, services, and personnel are at 1.4 million. So that is a little bit under that's significantly under the budget of 2.4 million. A straight line target would be about 2.4. I think everything has not been posted in this slide, so we could see that number be adjusted upward next year because we don't get, next month, excuse me, because we don't see our, the invoices don't come in time to post everything early in the month. So I think Lisa, unless you have questions for me for that update, I think Lisa is going to go over the financial statements for the Solid Waste Fund.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Jan. So you see before you the Solid Waste Disposal Fund balance sheet at June 30, 2020 compared to 2019. Cash at the end of the fiscal year was 27.5 million versus 22.6 last year. That's obviously a really good increase in money that, if you remember the cash flow projection, then we'll be setting aside for future capital. Restricted cash is 20.3 million. We have to restrict our cash for landfill closure and post-closure. So if you'll glance down in the liabilities, you will see a corresponding number for landfill closure and post-closure cost. Our property and equipment at the end of the year was 34.3 versus 36. Total assets, $82,448,793 at the end of the year. Total liability section, the most notable items are landfill closure and post-closure again, 20,338 versus 19,259. Contracts payable, 6.7 million. We did some refinancings last year. We did have some special obligation bonds outstanding, and we refinanced those with limited obligation bonds, which on our balance sheet are reported as contracts payable. So you just have to compare the total of the contracts and the bonds, which is about 7.4 million versus 6.7. So we got some better rates, and we continue to reduce the debt outstanding in the Solid Waste Disposal Fund. So our net position in this fund is about 54.5 million versus 50.5 million at the end of 19. A comparative revenue expense statement from 2020 to 2019. The first section are your operating revenues, 12.3 million versus 11.8, excuse me. It's about a 3% increase in revenues year over year. Your operating expenditure section, total operating expenses before depreciation, 8.1, slightly down from 8.4 from the previous year. Operating income is 1.1 versus a loss last year of 671,000. Your non-operating income section, we have intergovernmental of about 929,000 versus $1 million last year. Investment income is slightly less this year, 1.2 versus 1.9 last year. Interest expense 300 versus 284, very comparable. So our income before our transfers are 3.4 million versus 1.9, which brings us all the way to the bottom line of 54.5 versus 52.50. And again, here's our budget versus actual statement. Our actual budget was 11,200,000 budgeted revenues versus 12.3. So you can see we were over budget by about 1.1 million in our revenues last year. Total operating expenditures budgeted at 9.9, and they came in at about 8.2. So again, about 1.8 under budget We had an operating income of 4.1 before our non-operating revenues and expenditures. And you can see there the main ones are our principal retirement of 1.4 million and interest and fiscal of 3. That brought us down to $4,986,000 before the transfers in from solid waste and stormwater. So our change in position, 5.4 million, which is very, very similar to our increase in cash at the end of the year. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Lisa, I've got a question. On the solid waste here, the pension liability was flat year to year. In fact, it was to the dollar matching year to year. But on the water and the wastewater budget, the pension liability was significantly higher. Can you tell what's going on with that? Looks like this would be higher too.
Well, it's all about, I'm about to think about how to explain this. Pension liability is recorded, it's an accrued number that's recorded based on information that we get from the state, and it's based on the unfunded liability of the state. And it's also based on the inflows and the outflows of expenditures. There's a different makeup of employees in the water and sewer fund, and so it's could be related to just the amount that was paid in one period of time versus the other period of time. I'm not answering the question very well. It's kind of complicated, but it's an accrued number. It's not a cash out number. Let me put it that way. I'll be glad to talk with you offline if you want to and try to give you a little better explanation.
That's all right.
Are there any other questions before we move on to the agenda as far as our financials? Okay, thank you, Lisa. We'll turn it back over to Mike. We'll go over the agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. Item 2 is the one operations item we have. It's consideration of a resolution authorizing execution of various agreements regarding proposed water and/or sanitary sewer improvements.
Oh, Mike, you just muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I didn't mean to mute myself. At what point did I get cut off? Basically, we have 5 developer agreements this month with a total of $509,200 for water and $821,500 for sewer. Then moving on to the finance items. Item 3 is consideration of a resolution authorizing the acquisition of a vacant lot off Cooper Road adjacent to Muddy Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. A vacant lot adjacent to Muddy Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant is available for purchase. It would be advantageous to acquire this property and utilize it for buffer for the treatment plant. The lot contains 1.53 acres and a price of $12,240 has been negotiated for the purchase of this lot. Staff finds the negotiated price to be reasonable when compared to sales of nearby properties over the past year and recommends approval. Moving on to item 4, which is consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for backflow preventer testing and repair. This item is to award a contract for annual testing and repair of 347 city-owned backflow devices at city facilities. An RFP, a request for proposals, was issued for these services and 3 responses were received. The responses were reviewed by an evaluation panel of city staff, which selected backflow specialist of the Triad, Inc. for the work for an annual contract amount of $70,000, which the contract can be renewed for 2 additional years, making the total potential award $210,000 for 3 years. Just to note, the MWB subcontracting was removed from the evaluation criteria because the work will be self-performed. Staff recommends approval.
Mike, this is Chris. I've got a question. Maybe you can explain the category. It says staff availability for the backflow specialist, and it gave him a 0 as a grade.
Yes, Jerry or Mike Stover, do you want to touch on that?
going to read
Jerry,
to
do you
you.
want to tackle it or do you want me to?
Well, I'd love for you to while I'm searching for my document.
Mr. Parker, I believe it's the way the RFP was written. I can't remember exactly what the criteria was, but staff availability, I believe if you had less than 50% availability, you got 0 points. So it's not that they're not available to do the work, they just fell below that 50% threshold, I believe is correct. Jerry can confirm.
That's correct, Mike. This is Jakira. If the firms had 50% or less, then they would receive a 0.
So you're saying that they would get a 0, but they still have enough available staff?
Correct. They're also the incumbent. They've been doing this work for us for several years now, and we're confident that they can accomplish the work successfully.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, from an equity perspective, this is not applying to this, but on a go forward, the experience and qualification section is a big weight. And I'm wondering if we might, in the future, consider breaking those out, because if you think about it from an equity perspective, it's hard for them to get experience if they never get these jobs. So that's just a comment for the future equity kind of thought process. You don't need to respond, Mike.
That's a good observation. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to item 5, which is consideration of a resolution awarding a purchase order for ferric chloride. Bids were received on June 26, 2020 for ferric chloride for use at the wastewater treatment plants. 2 bids were received with PBS Chemicals, Inc., the low bidder at $138,000. Based on the bid amount, there will be an 8.15% or $10,400 increase annually in the cost of ferric chloride. Terms of the bid allow for the contract to be extended for 2 additional years, making the total potential award $414,000 for 3 years. Staff recommends approval. Item 6 is consideration of a resolution awarding a contract for the sewer replacements and stream stabilization project. This project includes the replacement of approximately 1,100 linear feet of existing sanitary sewer stream crossings at 9 different site locations, clearing of easements and access points, including tree removal, bypass pumping, riprap, and site restoration. 6 bids were received with North State Environmental, Inc., the low bidder, at $708,532. North State Environmental agreed to the subcontract goals established for this project of 7% minority and 7% women-owned businesses. It is recommended that a contract for this project be awarded to North State Environmental, Inc. in the total bid amount of $708,532, and that $35,000 be available for contingency if needed. The engineer's estimate for this project was $985,051.
This is Charles Wilson with a quick question. I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but North State's bid was so dramatically lower than even the engineer's estimate. It just makes me wonder why. It's just curiously lower than all the rest.
Jerry, do you want to touch on that?
I can touch on that. As you may recall, we've made attempts to bid this project several times over the last 2 years, 4 times actually, and in each case, bids were substantially over the nearly $1 million estimate. If this bid had come from someone that we didn't have familiarity with, it would cause concern or cause us to question their ability to know what they were doing, but they're a very viable contractor. They've studied this project for most of 2 years on how to achieve, how to submit a cost that might be more appropriate to our budget. And it's evident with the construction climate that we're now in, they were willing to make every effort to come in at an attractive bid. I think there's no doubt that over the last 2 years and the number of bids, they were I would say somewhat familiar with what we viewed as the estimated cost for this project, and they didn't want to lose it. They're a very viable provider. They've done this type of work in the past for the commission and do a great job.
I just didn't know if in the breakdown of their bid, if there were an itemized breakdown where it showed, here's where we're realizing $250,000 of savings versus your estimate.
Jerry, do you have that? I don't.
I have the bid tabulation, but it's. I mean, I'm not. I don't. There's 21 different line items on it, so it'd take me some doing to find something that might jump out at me that surprises me. But you know,
it just piqued my curiosity a little bit that it was so much lower and was the only one so much lower. But I'm, you know, as you say, you're confident that they're a good contractor and all that.
Yes, very confident.
Commissioner Wilson, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because as Jerry mentioned, we have bid this would be the fourth time. So, and previously all the prices were above the engineer's estimate and the budget. So we are starting to see, you know, some prices, some more competitive prices. So I think that's a good sign as far as, you know, our projects going forward.
Okay.
And if I could say one last thing about this project, 2 years ago, our estimate truly was closer to the $750,000, but because we continue to get bids in substantially higher, we reviewed the project scope and actually increased it slightly to try to keep up with what we felt the market might be doing. And as a result, it ended up coming back to where we thought it should have been in the beginning, or more close to what we felt it should have been. Mike Stover, would you find that to be correct?
Yes, sir. I would also add that North State Environmental is a local contractor. I believe they're, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, with WB, and we've done multiple stream bank projects with them in the past. And they've all been very successful.
What types of projects have we done?
Do what now?
What types of projects have they done for us?
Almost the exact same work. We done a Muddy Creek sewer line stabilization project where there was a clump of trees. It was in Clemens off the Muddy Creek interceptor. They fell off into the creek. The stream bank cut around the stumps, and we had I think it was a 54-inch sewer line in jeopardy of failing. And they came in and removed the debris out of the creek, built the stream bank back, very similar to what we're asking to do here, except we have smaller sites, just more of them.
And they respond pretty, stay on the project well, they don't delay things?
Absolutely. They actually, these stream bank projects go very quickly, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mike, Courtney, and Jerry. Moving on to item 7 is consideration of a resolution authorizing the execution of an engineering agreement with Hayden and Sawyer PC for water tank maintenance program. The existing water tank maintenance program ended in August, and staff issued a request for qualifications to find a new vendor for this program. 4 responses were received, with the selection panel of city staff recommending Hayden and Sawyer for the work. Staff negotiated a fee of $267,900 for 5 years for these services, and Hayden and Sawyer's submittal included 35% MWBE participation. Staff recommends approval of an agreement with Hayden and Sawyer for a 5-year water tank maintenance program in the amount of $267,900. Item 8 is consideration of a resolution awarding a purchase order to Andritz Separation for Inc. for repairs at the biosolids drying facility. This item is requesting a purchase order to rebuild the drum and furnace at the Elledge Wastewater Treatment Plant dryer facility due to normal wear and tear on the components. Andritz Separation Inc. is the manufacturer and provides parts and service work for the drum drying system at the Elledge plant. Andritz has provided a quote of $367,700 to provide the needed maintenance on the unit. Staff is requesting approval to issue a purchase order for the specialty services directly from Andritz as a sole source vendor for the preventive maintenance and repairs to the dryer system in the amount of $367,700 to maintain safe and proper operation of the drum drying equipment at the Elledge Wastewater Treatment Plant. Okay, item 9 is consideration of a resolution approving a purchase order to Atlas SSI as a sole source vendor. The Idols Raw Water Pump Station is the primary raw water source for the Nielsen and Thomas water treatment plants and contains 3 raw water pumps with a pumping capacity of 50 million gallons per day each. Large traveling screens that remove large debris that could potentially cause damage to the pumps protect these 3 raw water pumps. The existing screens were recently inspected, and excessive wear on 2 of the 3 traveling screen systems were noted, with a recommendation that they be rehabilitated. Atlas SSI is the manufacturer and sole provider of these parts for these traveling screens and provided a quote of $42,358 for parts to rebuild the traveling portion of 1 screen assembly. Since only 1 pump and screen can be out of service at a time, additional parts to rebuild the second traveling screen will be procured once the first traveling screen is back in service. Other components of the traveling screen will be evaluated while it is out of service to determine if those components need to be refurbished or replaced. Staff is requesting that a purchase order be awarded to Atlas SSI for $42,358 to cover the cost of the parts to rebuild the traveling portion of the screen showing the most wear.
This is Harold Day here. We've got 3 of these machines identical, so we think we're going to have to do the other 2 soon.
I'll answer that, Mr. Day. We do have 3. We have 3 pumps, 1 for each pump. During our inspection, 2 of the 3 showed excessive wear. So 1 is fine. The $42,000 to get the one of the 2 that is showing excessive wear back in service. And then we're going to break down the second one, and those costs will come in the future.
So we can expect another $40,000 to $50,000 in. That's what my question was.
I would say that's accurate, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Likely.
Hey, Michael, nothing relative to the item. Just a quick question. I didn't realize that Idols was the primary source for Thomas as well.
Yeah, so
go ahead, Mike.
Can you answer that, Mike?
Go ahead.
So Idols pumps raw water to the Nielsen reservoirs, and there's actually believe it or not, a gravity raw water line that flows from the Nielsen reservoirs back to Thomas. And, Thomas also has the ability to pull water from Salem Lake as well.
Which was my presumption. So I thought Salem Lake was their primary. So again, thanks. I was just learning something new.
All right, item 10 is consideration of a resolution requesting MWBE goals to be set below the 10% minimum goal for the gas extraction well and collection piping installation at Haynes Mill Road landfill. The city's internal MWBE committee met to identify subcontracting opportunities for this project. After reviewing the scope of work, identifying the relative availability of MWBE firms, and discussing the project specifications, it was determined that the subcontracting opportunities are nominal, consisting of a minimal amount of erosion control and clearing, and it is the recommendation of the committee that the MWBE participation goals be set at 4% MBE and 2% WBE. If there are no questions, I'll move on to items 11 and 12, which are planning and policy items. Item 11 is consideration of a resolution amending sections 17 and 53 of the water system policy resolutions. This item is to implement the changes recommended by the Planning and Policy Committee in September regarding hydrant meters and tanker permits. The changes to section 17 reduced the hydrant meter deposit from $3,000 to $1,500, lengthen the application period from 90 days to 6 months, and it also maintains the $500 non-refundable application fee. These changes also extend the tanker permit period from 6 to 12 months, with those the current fees remaining the same. Also of note, the change to section 53 clarifies that the backflow devices shall be tested upon installation, replacement, and annually. where it currently just states that they will be tested at least once per year. Any questions on item 11? Okay, item 12 is consideration of a resolution amending section 7 of the Water System Policy Resolutions. This item is also to implement changes recommended by the Planning and Policy Committee in September regarding the resale of water, and aligns our policy with the North Carolina Utility Commission requirements. This section covers the approval of a lessor to resell water to a leased premise. It keeps the language that the director shall be notified that a certificate of authority has been issued to the lessor by the North Carolina Utility Commission. It removes the language that the operator of said system shall provide annually a statement of revenue generated by the resale of water. That's not information that Winston-Salem County Utility needs. It also removes the language that all meters used by the operator of the system must comply with the American Water Works Association C700 or C701 specifications for potable water meters, and now leaves that the required specifications at the North Carolina Utility Commission level. Any questions on item 12?
Thank you, Mike. So we have 12 agenda items, the approval of last minutes, 1 operations committee, 2 planning and policy items, and the balance being finance. Are there any commission, again, in our practice from Zoom meetings, we would entertain a motion to approve these with a consent agenda. However, are there any commission members that would like to pull and discuss any or vote on any item separately?
I'll make a motion to move approval for the consent agenda. This is Chris Parker.
I second Dwayne Long.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, get ready for roll call vote. Okay, this is for the motion to approve agenda items 1 through 12 via consent agenda. Mr. Curtis.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Ms. Hines.
Did you hear me? Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jernigan.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Younger.
Yes.
And Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, staff, and well done. Courtney, either back to you or Shane.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we'll just move. We've got about 15 more minutes, and so we'll move along to a capital projects update, and I will turn it over to Shane.
Thank you, Courtney. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all had a great weekend. So first off, the Muddy Creek Combined Influent Pump Station, our estimated completion is in December of this year. They're currently working on punch list items, including site cleanup and paving to reach substantial completion. So here you can see in this picture, there's the headworks, and you can see that they've placed a 2.5-inch asphalt binder course for the intermediate layer. And they're doing the second phase of the driveway grading so that they can place the first layer of the asphalt. They will also be demolishing the temporary influent pump station starting this month. So here is a picture of the side of the Headworks building. You can see the curb and gutter has been installed, and they're currently working on the elevator on the inside of the building. For Kerner's Mill Lift Station.
Hey, Shane, just before we leave that huge project, can you give us any levels of confidence about December of 2020 and the status of our ongoing discussions with the contractor?
Well, I think we are pretty much on track. They're working on the punch list items in terms of finishing in December. We both us and Black and Beach are pretty comfortable with that. Now there's some other. There isn't any big major problems at this point. So
cool. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Kerner's Mill Lift Station, notice to proceed was January of this year. All of the civil work has been completed. They are working on the mechanical and electrical work. They have the new generator was delivered and is in place now. And to the left, you can see the wet well bypass, and the right is the new generator that's been installed. Roswell Lift Station, we're at around 50% contract time. All the underground electrical work at the lift station has been completed. The valve vault has been set. The sewer force main at Browns Run Lift Station is almost complete. The gravity sewer at Linville Springs installation is almost complete as well. Here you can see the progress map. The green is what they've completed so far. The yellow is what they're currently working on this month. North Mill Creek. So the notice to proceed for this project was February of this year. They've cleared the easement and installed the erosion control, but pipe installation is ongoing, but they're behind schedule. We've been documenting the issues, and we're working with our engineer to try to address them.
This is Commissioner Day. I'd like to go back to that Roswell.
Sure.
The customer out there that didn't like us, have we any more conflict with her?
We've been in contact with that property owner, and we're working through, getting the project completed. So I think we're good. We're pretty much in front of their property right now, but we shouldn't be there much longer. And so I think we're able to work through those issues.
Well, good. I hadn't heard nothing from her either. That's good.
Yeah.
I think I was at the progress map, Courtney.
Yep, thank you.
So here is the progress map. So the green to the lower left-hand corner is what they've completed. So they still have a whole lot of red that's got a ways to go. And that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
All done.
Craig. Okay, so that's all we had for you today, and we're finished about 12 minutes early. So
wow, we still have to. Marilyn's going to make us vote again, so don't say that 12 minutes too much. Any commission members like that? Yeah.
Courtney, this is Don.
Yes.
Make sure you send me the presentations.
I will.
Thank you.
So just so you know, we put the presentations in Dropbox, but if anybody has any issues, accessing them from Dropbox, let me know and I can email them to you.
Okay.
Any other commission members have anything to address or bring up?
No.
Hearing none, Mr. Day.
Well, I was going to say, wish us luck on our move.
Yes, good luck. Yeah, hey, send pictures actually.
Okay.
Not those that are working at home. Those that are going down to.
That's right.
I'll say one thing, if I may, Randall.
Sure.
Yeah, the water tower on Trey Street, that really looks nice.
It does.
It does.
Man,
great paint job.
Oh, I tell you what, it's like sparkling clean. Those people coming out of the beer tavern right there, they have something nice to look at.
Thank you.
I was driving on 52 and noticed how exactly was sparkly white. It just was popping.
It is really good.
How does Wes know about the beer place?
I drive by there on my way to church. Hey, that's
well answered.
That's the truth too. I go to church on New Bethel on Trade Street, so I see it.
Much less your work.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
All right, Mr. Day.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting for the day.
I'll second it. It's Wesley.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ready to vote? Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Jernigan?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Agreed.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Younger?
Yes.
And Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you all. Staff, wonderful job. It's good to be with you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.